Welcome to Alfalfa, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome. It has been a shitstorm of a week. We're going to dive right into that and hopefully give you a little bit of sanity. There's been, if you're watching the video on YouTube right now, Steven just might have hurt himself terribly, but he's still here. Hi, Steven. I'm glad you're here.
Hello.
Yes, Luna, Tera, the Tera stablecoin. Lots to talk about. Very tough week for the markets. We're going to start with that for our investing segment. Then we're going to go into crypto regulation, probably more specifically stablecoin regulation as a result of what we just witnessed this last week. And then we're going to wrap it up with our life segment on mental health, sanity in a bear market. I am sick, so I'm bringing about 30% of my energy. Just apologies in advance to everybody listening. And speaking of the Talipino, Nick Urbani is on vacation. Hi, Nick. Hope he's enjoying himself, probably somewhere beautiful in the world. And a couple quick announcements before we kick off. Leave a review for us in Apple Podcasts. Specifically, if you go down into the Alfalfa show, scroll down, leave 5 stars in the comments section, leave a review for us, and we'll read it out on the next episode. We'd love to hear from you. And given that we're in a shitstorm, if you want some guidance and education for all things crypto, check out Collective Shift. The link is below in the description. It's all things crypto education and guidance and investing advice. And if you use our code, you'll get a discount as well. And we've had a lot of conversation going on in the Discord. In particular, you two guys have been dropping a ton of alfalfa in the Discord. And it's just been a really nice ongoing conversation with the community. So the link to that is also in the show notes below. And last but not least, Steven is looking for employment. If you have any good job opportunities to send his way, you can tweet at him directly. What's your Twitter handle, Steven?
At Steven Cesaro. Good luck
We
spelling
might have
that.
to spice that up.
I know. I need to.
Actually, it's in the show notes as well. There's a link to it. And if you tweet him something funny, I'll read it out on the next episode as well. Any funny job opportunities, send him his way. So, boys, let's do the Alfalfa round, and then I want to hear how you feel about everything going on. Steven, you wanna kick it off through trades, if any?
Yeah. I mean, I think the most critical thing for the vast majority of the listeners is probably that I took a lot of time this week to start setting my bids. This is one of the nice things about taking profits when you're in the mania phase, is that you actually in times like this get to take a step back with some cash on hand and think about, okay, where do I buy? So bought a little bit of Bitcoin at like 28K ish. I do think it's going lower. I've got bids set at 24K, little above 24K, 22K, 18K. I think there's a pretty good chance we trade down there in the next couple months. ETH I still think is a little overheated compared to Bitcoin. I tweeted about this last week. I was kind of worried it had a lot to fall versus Bitcoin in value, So I got my bids stacked a little lower there. I think this kind of 1700-ish area is going to be a area that's probably going to be pretty well defended. But I do think there is a good chance it's going to break. So I've got a lot of bids kind of stacked around the 1700 area and all the way down to 700. I've got some goblin stink bids there. If we get one of our classic like scam candles, during the full panic, like we saw last night, and some of the other altcoins that used to be like what ETH did back in the day. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to keep a long-term picture. I think that these prices for ETH and Bitcoin are long-term good levels. I think sub 30 Bitcoin and sub 2K ETH is like a really good long-term level, so I am trying to focus on accumulating. That's kind of the name of the game now. The yields are going to be dead. A lot of the active trading is going to be dead. It's time to kind of just sit back and be patient, and I think slowly buy. This is the time you actually make money, not the mania phases. So I've been trying to fight all of my not so great base instincts. That's been very, very emotional, even though this is not my first rodeo the last few days. So yeah, alpha of the week is planning the buys.
Nice.
Doing it ahead of time.
Nice. Well played. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh man, I feel like shit, you guys. I'm sick too. I'm depressed with this market. I feel awful. I closed my shorts. That was stupid. I was expecting a bounce at some point. A bounce has to happen. But I think there's like everyone's still looking for the exit door. So then we're not going to get a bounce until there's like absolute panic, fear in the market. And I think we're just not even there yet. Yeah, I sold all my ETH at like 3,200, 3,400. I always keep a long bag, like the forever bag. I never sell that, but I'm kind of happy that I got out, but I'm just pissed off at myself that I closed all my shorts early. So I'm not ready to buy yet. I'd be more inclined to just wait it out. I guess the limit orders are a good way to do that.
Mm-hmm. And this is to all the listeners, this is telling of the kind of episode to expect today. But don't worry, we are going to have a group therapy session, and the group therapy session is going to end with some I think we should share some best practices about how to survive this. Like, honestly, even as friends, we just haven't talked, right? In this last few days about any of this. So I'm very curious to end this conversation with like supporting each other with how we stay sane and healthy. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that really, really need to hear that right now. Cause I mean, not to start off on an extremely sober point, but like Eric and I were talking before the episode started, and he was like, man, yeah, it's a real thing. I was reading on Reddit that someone took their life. And unfortunately that happens in far too many times in bear markets and in situations like this. And unfortunately, money just has such a powerful hold over people's lives. Their whole sense of identity is structured around it. And
well, do you want to talk about what happened a little bit for people who?
Yeah, well, that was just context. More. Let me give my alpha, and then we'll dive in. But I just wanted to say,
sorry, that's I'm a terrible mod. That's why I don't do
this. So my alpha for the week, that was more just a teaser for how we'll close. But look, my alpha for the week is, I didn't mention this in the last episode, but so I was accumulating ApeCoin up until that Yuga Labs land sale. I think I texted you guys about this, but I accumulated about almost as much as I'd received in the airdrop. And then when we hit over $20 in ApeCoin, I started selling that off. And I sold almost practically all of it down to how much I needed for like the land sale, which I didn't even end up buying extra. So I'm very happy with that trade. I basically bought at about an average of $10 to $12, sold at about an average of $22, $23. So doubled that up, which was nice. And then ever since then, in the last week, I've been taking all the other random shit coins that I've accumulated, whether through airdrops or whatever. I've always had like a stash of random shit, which makes up about 10% of my portfolio, my crypto portfolio. And I just started swapping that all for Bitcoin and ETH and stables, mostly stables, not Tera, thank God, but mostly USDC. And that is just there to get ready to buy. And I have not bought much yet. I'm going to start DCing in over this next, God knows how long, but we'll be talking about that in the show. And, just going to be accumulating as much as I humanly can, honestly, during this bear market. I've learned the hard way that that's the right thing to do. So that's my alpha. So yeah, let's kick off with what really has been going on in the market this week. Steven, do you want to kind of give us a high level and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday or the approximately 24 to 36 hours before that, I mean, that was the craziest day I've ever seen. Tera, the blockchain coin Luna, and the stablecoin UST, just completely imploded. I think it went from a 23 or $24 billion market cap, something like that. It was trading at $116 or so. a few weeks ago. Traded at, I actually bought some this morning for a flip for 88 cents. And in the span of one day, it traded from like $65 or something all the way down to like 60 cents. Absolutely wild. And, we're talking about a top 10 protocol just turning into dust overnight, just over 10 billion, maybe 20 billion when you factor in some of the UST losses plus the Luna price. Just complete destruction. I've never seen anything like it, really.
Yeah. Speaking of, have we ever had? And sorry, I throughout this conversation, I might do some of those questions that we talked about, Steve. But have we ever had like a top 10 coin like that? I can't recall anything like this.
No, in 2017 we had a BitConnect.
Yeah,
but like when you chart BitConnect versus Luna, it's like almost doesn't even register. I think Hoffman actually posted a chart of it side by side, and it just paled in comparison. Like, so
how big was BitConnect at its peak?
It was nothing. I feel like it was like 500 million or so, maybe. Maybe. Okay. I don't even know if it hit $1 billion. Don't quote me on that, but just fraction of Tera, and Tera was so much worse too, because while BitConnect in 2017 was its own kind of like memeable Ponzi scheme, it just sort of existed on its own, right? Tera and UST were integrated with a ton of different protocols. They had spread throughout Ethereum and a variety of other blockchains, Solana, AVAX, Phantom. That coin was everywhere. We probably still haven't even seen the full effects of the impact yet. I'm worried about firms like Celsius and Nexo, and whether or not they were juicing some yield on the back end through Anchor. Worried about protocols using it for like a treasury yield. Anything else that we don't even know like has happened yet. I think there's still some unknowns there, and it's definitely a little bit scary.
So what do you think are the biggest ramifications after an implosion of this magnitude? Yeah. I think like you're right that this is going to have like crazy domino effects. The biggest of which is probably like regulations coming quicker and more heavy-handed than and
the perception of the public, perhaps the novice investor or the one that has been awaiting an entry point. These are the people texting me and being like, dude, what the fuck are you involved in even? That looks like the biggest Ponzi in the world. Like, what are you doing? Like, does this prove a lot of people's points?
The Warren Buffetts and Charlie Mungers of the world just coming to say, I told you so.
Is this the told you so moment? How bad? And then this is more just a question. I know it sounds rhetorical, but it's not. It's like, how bad is this really for crypto as a whole? What are really the ripple effects? I guess it's obviously impossible to know, but if we had to guess, I can say for sure that from the outside looking in, for the novice investor, for the person who has a little bag of crypto, they're looking at this and they're just more terrified than ever before. They're like, why would I put any significant amount of money into this? Which goes back to rule number 1, put in what you can afford to lose. And sadly, that is still the case. This is not a secure asset class, in particular, some of the stuff with stablecoins, which we'll be talking about. But yeah, how bearish is this for long-term ecosystem market sentiment?
So long-term, I think this is bullish, because in much the same way that forest fires kind of cull the overgrowth in a forest, and they have this kind of natural mechanism in stabilizing the ecosystem. Like, so too is this. Like, this is a similar thing, because you're taking projects or ideas that are fundamentally sort of like misaligned or bad for the ecosystem as a whole, right? And they they take up capital, they take up people's time, they take up people's energy, time, money that could be directed elsewhere to more productive things, and they refocus them in the correct spot.
That is a very good analogy. Is that your analogy? I'm gonna have to like trademark that for you. That's very good.
Thank
you. That was good.
So
you think that the money is going to eventually flow to the most anti-fragile protocols like Bitcoin and ETH? Is like a natural consolidation?
Look, I think the market for a long time has needed a reminder of why crypto exists in the first place. Now, I do respect that Tera was kind of trying to do something crypto, that kind of was adjacent to the crypto ethos. They were trying to build a stablecoin that was truly decentralized and also truly scalable, which is the thing we haven't really been able to do. It is this like big multi-trillion-dollar problem, but we also have this problem in DeFi and crypto as a whole, where we are getting really good at these kind of Ponzi-nomics schemes where we're able to warp all of these incentives to kind of bootstrap incredible growth in the short run, but a growth that sort of inevitably ends in complete annihilation and at a pace that's like very, very rapid, right? I think I don't know if Armand was a part of Iron Finance, but I was and you were, and I've done like 25 variations of these things, all the way back to the original uncollateralized stablecoin, which I think was Basis Cash. I've played these games trying to make money, right? But like Luna was dangerous because it was kind of the first one that was like really dressing itself in something that was super legitimate.
Wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, and like I feel bad because I don't know. We've joked about it on this pod before, and we've always called it a Ponzi, and we'd probably do it in a way where like people don't really understand what we're talking about because we live in this crypto world, right? Where you sort of acknowledge it's this like dark humoristic kind of acknowledgement of like the reality of what's happening around you, right? Which is that a lot of this stuff was like a big casino. It was a lot of Ponzi games, and if you were good at those games and understood them, you could make money, right? But if you were a kind of just newbie wandering in, it's just so easy to get completely wrecked. I even lost a good chunk of money in the Luna blow up because well, partially because I just didn't get out in time because I'm stupid.
It happened so fast. Like it happened.
Yeah, it happened fast. I knew it was going to explode, and I just wanted to go to dinner. Is the reality of my situation. So that's
just to give
me being an idiot.
Context to this, like 30 days, even 14 days ago, just price of Luna, Tera, $80, not even 5 days ago, and it's at $1 today. So that's the level of, just to give people that don't have that context. We're talking about something that has completely lost its value. There was
you got to have empathy for the investors, but not only them. Like, how about the builders that were like building on the Tera ecosystem, and like now everything they've worked on is now just like scrap, worthless.
Like Tera, and what Do Kwon, the founder of Tera, did was very kind of it was very the opposite of the Bitcoin ethos, right? Ethereum kind of like went a little bit outside the Bitcoin ethos and said, we're going to move a little bit faster. We're going to try a few more things. We need to do stuff that's more robust, but it still did it in a bit of a, kind of decentralized fashion. Like Tera was basically like, this crypto stuff is too slow. It's too decentralized. It's too inefficient. We're going to have this like charismatic founder who does like an Elon Musk tweet style and tries to pump the price of his coin and rally community, and the idea that community equals network equals value, right? And I'm going to bootstrap the adoption of UST, and we're going to run this like it's basically like a centralized company to a degree. It was very sort of anti the original ethos of Bitcoin. Bitcoiners are certainly all, some of them are probably laughing. But they're feeling validated, I think, at the very least today. But because that type of mentality, that kind of new or that old TradFi world mentality has just like completely exploded. And as bad as like Ethereum and Bitcoin did today, like when you looked at the charts today, it was one of the worst bloodbaths I've ever seen. But at one point, like, you know, you saw Tera down, Luna down like 68%. You saw a chain like even an Avalanche, which people are kind of, you know, saying is this Ethereum killer, 37% down, right? Meanwhile, ETH was down like 3 or 4%. Bitcoin was down 3 or 4% at the time, right? Yeah. So to get back to my long-term thing, there is today, I think for the first time in a long while, we saw the market realize that there is a real divide between BTC and ETH and everything else. We saw a ton of capital flow, you know, from the L1s into ETH and from the whole ETH L1 world into Bitcoin. And ultimately a lot of capital left the ecosystem as a whole because we did have a very down day. But like there was a massive rotation from one sector, which was really the big sector for the last bull run, right? Into kind of the old school safe havens, Bitcoin and ETH. There was this recognition of the market that decentralization does matter. Safety in the time of those 1 in 900 days when the shit does hit the fan is like way more important than the other 899 days when everything is going smoothly. And this is especially true of stable coins, right? I watched Doe give a lot of shit to Rune and the founders of Maker, who created DAI, right? The originally Ethereum backed stablecoin, because it was kind of slow and didn't grow a lot, right? But Luna's gone, UST's gone, DAI is still $1. DAI's already survived the COVID crash. You know, so a lot of things are kind of coming full circle right now. It's like days like this or yesterday that really make you realize why we're here. But you and I and Eric, we're just kind of reinforcing these existing beliefs we've had. And I've gotten away from some of them, and I'm sure you have as well. It's very easy to get caught up in the mania, and you kind of drift from your first principles. But there's a whole lot of other people out there who are just learning these things from the first time. They don't understand why Luna wasn't going to go to like $100 trillion. And they don't understand why ETH is so expensive to use. They don't understand why Bitcoin doesn't quote unquote do anything, right? And now they're sort of learning. They're it's like kind of like their first annihilation, you know. And they're learning those lessons. It's like this circle of life where every time you're in the market, right, every cycle you kind of go through and you learn. Like it seems like everybody learns the same lessons over and over again, right? So if this is your first time here, you know, congratulations. You've learned why we call things shit coins, you know. You've learned why BTC is what it is. You've learned why ETH what it is. Or maybe if you don't realize it exactly, you've learned that the market certainly does, because those two coins are substantially less wrecked, right? Just to put some stuff, like I think there are some L1s like Harmony or Phantom, like there are L1s that are down like 90%, 95% already, and ETH was, you know, down 60% in that time span. And that might not sound like a lot, but that's like the equivalent of like losing half of your money like 2 more times, right, after you already went down. So it is.
Phantom's down 40% today. Like, this is fucked.
It's insane. It's just like an absolute carnage. There's no other way to say
Remember
it.
when people were saying that we won't ever have a bear market in crypto ever again?
I mean, all those people were idiots, obviously. I don't know who believed that. I mean, there was some talk of the quote unquote super cycle thing, and a lot of super I don't know if I'm willing to write off the super cycle, but like super cycle, like if we bounce here on Bitcoin and everything slowly just kind of bleeds for 3 or 4 or 5 months, and Bitcoin just kind of holds this line while everything else bleeds out, it's kind of a super cycle for Bitcoin. It trades down like 50, 60% and then resumes back up. That's pretty good. That's a lot better than negative 90.
What was the previous high? Because isn't that a level people look at that it doesn't go lower than the previous high?
I mean, I think we hit 69K, right?
68,000.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what about from the last cycle previous high? Was that like
Last
20K?
cycle previous high is 20K.
Yeah.
20K. We went from 20 to 33 ish, you know? So that was
that'd be interesting if we drop
I think we
below
drew
that.
down like 93, 94% last cycle, right?
Ooh.
So drawing down quote unquote only 60 would be a big victory.
Couple highlights there. One, I think love the forest fire analogy. I think that's important. I think I'll probably have that clipped. Nicely done, Stephen. Second one is I think the perspective that you shared is really important around, taking these losses, these L's, as the Zoomers would say, taking the L's on the chin and understanding that these are ultimately the time and the steps necessary to create wisdom as an investor. Like you have to look at it that way. And I know a lot of people that were Luna rich, and by a lot I mean like at least 4 or 5 people like very close to me that had a lot of Luna, and they're devastated, and like most of their net worth at this point within crypto came from Luna. And if you wake up one day and that is completely gone, I mean, think about the different ways people played this. Like so many people probably were like, I'm just going to wait it out. It's going to be okay. I trust Do Kwon, blah, blah, blah. Another couple days goes by, from 30, it's at $1. And now you have nothing when you could have gotten out with something. There's all these different psychological situations that can really fuck a person up. And it's terrible. And if anyone's listening that is in that situation, my heart goes out to you. It's absolutely terrible. That said, we're playing a long-term game here, and there's cleanup happening. And I think this cleanup is ultimately healthy, and you end up learning patterns. Even just myself, I've learned so many patterns in NFT trading. And if there's one simple pattern that we've talked about so many times between us on this pod, and one that I'll just mention right now, you have to watch out for this euphoria. Every time the euphoria is happening, we end up chasing it. That's obviously what we call FOMO. And these are the times where you as a human being become so emotional that you can't help yourself but to shovel cash and take out a loan just to get involved in that thing that everyone is telling you is going to make you rich. The reality is, though, the room left for that to go up at that point of entry into the market is very little. It's like another 5%, because you're catching the tail end of that. The euphoria is already there. The smart investor in that moment is selling. That's what they're doing. They're selling. And the smart investor in this moment is accumulating. And so what I think we'll be talking about a lot on this podcast, depending on how long this all lasts, is what we're accumulating and how and to what degree. But these are the lessons we learn the hard way. And like you said, Stephen, like I'm a pretty risk averse investor, and every time any of these shitcoins has come up, I'm always apprehensive. I'm like, I'm just buying more Bitcoin and ETH. And the reason that I've always leaned a little bit more heavily toward Bitcoin, because it's less volatile. And in moments like this, which you talked about in the Discord, hurts a little less, feels a little better. Do I get the same level of return? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not over the next 5 years. But if you can't stomach the volatility, like you definitely don't want to be in shitcoins because you can lose it all. And you definitely don't want to be too ETH heavy. But overall, long term, you're okay with those two for now. And we don't really have, I don't know if we really have a solid third asset within the crypto space that we could count on at all to be a long term bag holding item. I mean, you'd probably have to say it's like a Bored Ape. Like that would be the next best thing. That's the only thing that isn't absolutely fucked right now.
CryptoPunk before Bored Ape, but we can
CryptoPunk.
We can argue about that.
CryptoPunk, a Bored Ape, and maybe a couple other NFTs, but really, ultimately, you're just holding
I'd rather have
Ethereum.
Coinbase stock, probably long term.
So, wanted to kind of highlight some of Stephen's points and add a couple of my own there. But Eric, I'm curious about, you're saying this sucks to watch, and you obviously have a strong background in all this here. Yeah, how are you thinking about Tera and Luna and everything you've seen this past week?
We've been sending a lot of empathy towards like Terra investors, but like, Bitcoin and ETH are down 60% too, and that doesn't feel good. And if you're going to be a long-term holder in ETH, you're probably just not selling, right? I sold, and I don't like selling ETH, because I want to accumulate as much as possible, basically. I try to remind myself that the biggest nightmare scenario is I sell ETH and then it just takes off. Like it goes by me and then I don't have ETH or Bitcoin, right? Either of those assets. Like, so then when you try to play that trading game, like I've been doing, I'm like, I'm kind of like profitable on it now because the price is lower than when I sold. And like, I kind of want to be pragmatic about getting back in, like take a W when I can, which is like, the price is lower now, I can buy back in. And basically to your point, like, don't be so emotional that like the sky's falling, market's collapsing, like just get out forever. I'm really thinking about trying to protect myself against the biggest nightmare, which is missing this sort of like generational industry growth opportunity.
Well, let me ask you, and then we can wrap this segment. Number one question people are asking us, and just in general, am I selling? Like, this shit is falling apart. It's all burning to the ground. Do I sell? And some people are asking, do I buy? Is now the time to buy? Is this my entry point? Do I sell some stock? Do I take the cash that's been sitting on the sidelines and buy right now? What do you think? You obviously, speaking as a professional trader, investor, you're selling ETH because you're trying to make up the difference. You're trying to enter ETH back in at a cheaper price. But what would you say to a friend?
Man, it's so hard because nobody knows what the price action is going to do in the future. Like, my crystal ball is just as good as anybody else's. I think, Steven and I were chatting on text saying that we were around in 2001, like when we saw like a very similar euphoria in the .com boom, .com bubble. And, that one wrecked a lot of people, including me and Steven. And one thing that I recall from that era was that the NASDAQ, it took 16 years for the NASDAQ to recapture the highs from the .com bubble bursting. 16 years. So like, this thing can go on for a long time. And I think the similarities between this crypto boom and the .com boom, we draw so many similarities, but I don't imagine that it'll take 16 years for like ETH to regain its previous highs, or Bitcoin. But it's something that I'm thinking about, that like we're probably in the early innings still of this market drawdown.
Yeah, for me, the person that's asking, do I sell right now, whose initial intent and goal was to accumulate a large amount of crypto and hold for at least 5, 7, 10 years and be able to retire off this one day, the answer is 100% do not sell. Because
Can I offer a slight modification to that?
Well, you can, but this is let me give you mine, and then I want your version of how I can think about this better. But I wouldn't. So, because the person that I'm thinking about in this situation, they just don't have the ability to time this. And if the goal originally was to be in this for 7 to 10 years and end up with a lot of Ethereum and Bitcoin, millions of dollars worth, and be able to retire off it, which is our intention as well in many ways, for that person to try to time this is very difficult. And if they're going to sell in this moment, it's just an emotional reaction. So that person, I would say, do not sell. And to the person who doesn't have enough crypto and is ready to enter, I say absolutely. You won't regret buying. Will it potentially be $1,800 ETH, next month? Absolutely. So I would say just start dollar cost averaging your way in. If you have any level of fear, FOMO, or regret that you might mistime it. So that's what I like to do, because I worry that I might mistime it. So I just take that time horizon. I'm like, okay, I think the next 6 months is going to be shit. And I divide up whatever cash I have and I start buying. But to that person, I say, yeah, I think this is a good time to get in. But it could get a lot worse. Could get a lot uglier. So how would you tweak that, Stephen? And actually, I want that personally, even too, is what I'm trying to say. Like, that's my thinking. That's going to be my approach. I'm not selling. I'm accumulating. What would you tell me if I was asking you that?
Yeah, I would just be cautious at referring to it as crypto. Like, people who were not around in 2017, like they should just pull up like the coin market cap list of like the top 50 coins at like the peak of 2017, right? And see how many of them ever made a new all-time high, or how many of them even exist anymore. Like, the answer is that, like, when you talk about crypto in general, right? I think the vast majority of coins and the vast majority of NFTs especially will never see another all-time high, right?
Yeah. So I'm so glad you're talking, because I just keep playing it through the frame of like the person who's asking, should I sell, is asking, should I sell Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Yeah. So those are different. Those are different things, right? And we should definitely make that clear, right? Because I personally think that, there's probably a 95% chance that Bitcoin or ETH sees a new all-time high, right? And there may be a lot of other projects, right, that were just launched in the wrong time, and maybe they just got crushed by the market, or they just didn't quite find their fit yet, or what. I have no doubt there'll be some stuff that people held that will do like 100x in the next bull run, right? But it's hard to find those gems, right? And this is, you should do this earlier, right? But like, now is a good time to take stock and be like, why do I own this? Do I just own this because a TikTok influencer shilled it to me? Do I even know what this coin does, right? If you don't have BTC or ETH, and the answer to that question is like, no, I don't know what this does or why I own it, then sorry, your table centerpiece just collapsed next to me.
Oh no.
But if that's the case for people, right, then now is a great time to think about like, well, why the hell do I have this? What, because at the very least, you could still have crypto and just sell it for Bitcoin or sell it for ETH, right?
Which is what I did, and I talked about it.
Like days like today, right? As a general rule, if your coin goes down 40% in a day, and it's not like literally dead, like Luna, probably not today is the day you sell. Like, you almost always get a relief rally after a day like this. Like, there will be coins that lost 30-40% today that rally like 20-25% in the coming weeks, probably, right? And when that time comes, that's when you have to like check yourself mentally, because you're going to be like, oh my God, it's back on. That was capitulation. Now it's up only again. But that's when you have to have the discipline to be like, wait a minute, okay, I've been granted a sort of second chance on life. Having 30 cents on the dollar is better than ultimately having 0 cents on the dollar. I'm not comfortable psychologically. Maybe I should just pull out. Maybe I should conserve my capital, or maybe I should buy Bitcoin and take a step back and think about what I'm doing, right? That's what I would say to people. But like, the idea that you just hodl everything no matter what and it goes back up is not true. And it's especially not true in NFTs. And that's going to be like a real, I know we've talked about this before a million times on the show. But this is the first like ICO bust, but for NFTs, right? So much stuff is going to go no bid. It's going to go to zero. And that's just going to be it. Like, all this stuff will never recover.
Very good. Very good nuance, of course. These details are so important. That's a good... The centerpiece. That's a good segue.
This thing weighs like 10,000 pounds.
It's like your tungsten cube.
Holy.
It's like the tungsten cube of Voss's.
That might have been the top of the bull market when I bought a $400 1.5 square inch tungsten cube. That
was my top signal.
Might have actually like exactly correlated. I have to go check.
No, I actually remember we were like mass euphoria. We're coming over to Steven's house. Hey, bro, check out this rock.
It's tungsten. Like, it's cool. It's very dense.
Check this out. I'm doing really good, man.
I still love
remember that. I do. I want one. I want one. I actually Googled it. I think it's
probably worth like $1,200 now with the current commodity prices. So jokes on you guys.
That's true.
It's probably up more than the ETH is.
That's so good.
Oh, for sure. So that's a good segue to regulation. So what's her face? Janet
Janet Yellen.
Yellen came
Very
out.
strange. She was prepared with the UST talking points. Kind of makes you
She
think.
was prepared.
Literally the next day.
Kind
Yeah.
of makes you think.
He said she read it in the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, read it in the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, it's not that Ken Griffin was like, "I'm going to blow this up."
Yeah, talking like in their text thread.
Yeah.
Oh God. So let's give a little context there. But she's the Treasury Secretary, correct?
She's former Fed chair, right?
Former Fed chair.
Former Fed chair. And yeah, she talked about the statement is a very short statement, but a lot of people call her like a crypto hater. But she did speak to the fact that this is revolutionary technology. And there are, I should probably just pull up the exact quote, but she talked about the importance of regulation specifically for stablecoins, especially after what happened with UST. So we've talked about regulation a lot. I'm curious about just exploring this concept, the overall stance, how it's going to affect things, and if you guys are for or against regulation.
Yeah, it's a nuanced question, right? It's the old, are you for or against?
I guess it's inevitable.
Immigration. Yeah, I'm like, I would say that my views on this topic have actually evolved quite a bit. I was definitely, this is normal for people. I think you start off as like a communist, like socialist, idealist young person, and then maybe you swing too wildly, and then suddenly you're like a libertarian, and then you're like, it doesn't work, and then you swing a little back the other way. So I feel like the same way on the regulatory stuff. Like I was very into the kind of Bitcoin no regulation ethos for a while, but like 2 years of being steeped in DeFi and seeing what happens there and what happens to people who use it, who don't understand what they're doing, has definitely changed my view on this, right? And this is kind of like one of those interesting like libertarian arguments, right? Where it's like you have like the likes of Milton Friedman used to argue for the non-existence of like the FDA and all these other like regulatory agencies, the idea that they kind of cause this long-term harm. And I think regulation does like dramatically decrease the efficiency of markets. There's no doubt about that, right? The problem is that you're also dealing with like human beings, right?
People and get wrecked.
Like permanently wrecked. It was really sad to see so many people tweeting about people taking their lives because they lost all their money.
So you saw a lot of this.
Yeah, and I really felt for people because I do this professionally and I lost money, right? But like I've probably played in 300 Ponzi games at this point. I was bound to lose some, and I have risk limits. I don't put X amount at risk. Like I do all these things, right? But I recognize that most people don't do that. There are a lot of people who just took all of their money and deposited it in Anchor to get 20%. And while it's
game in town,
like while it's true that if you don't have regulation, like the market as a whole probably rapidly iterates and arrives at its final conclusion a lot faster with like a better product. Along the way, like I've come to realize, you also leave like a lot of like human wreckage, right? And individual lives, right? And people, they're not like so easily like adaptable and replaceable like these protocols, which can just kind of keep iterating and come in and out of existence. So there needs to be an intelligent balance there that prevents stuff like this from happening. And this isn't just for a plea to humanity, right? This is also a recognition of the fact that bull market one, we had BitConnect, which was a lovable, memeable Ponzi that destroyed a lot of people's wealth, but it was kind of small and not really contained. Luna was also almost became a systemic risk that could have, the next time we may get something that can bring down world financial markets. Like I don't think that regulators are actually being dramatic when they talk about this. Like at the exponential rate of Ponzi evolution, the next one could hit 1 trillion and then get like who knows what could happen, right? Yeah. Like there's definitely the potential for that. So I would like to see more regulation on like the likes of like the Coinbases and exchanges that kind of interact with this and kind of use them as a proxy right? So that if you're like a newbie, you could just do all your business through Coinbase and not touch this stuff, right? And know that you're not gonna like there should have never been
How
like
would you
UST
not
on an
touch this
exchange.
stuff? Like, oh, that's what I mean. Yeah, like
Right.
UST is on an exchange, USDC is on an exchange.
Well, USDC's fine.
But
you
the
know?
anchor protocol is in DeFi.
Okay, not touching those. Yeah.
Yeah, or be like 1 degree of separation removed from touching some of this stuff, right? Like FTX US is like it's supposedly regulated exchange, but like Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder, and Alameda, and these groups, they are very connected to a lot of the stuff and sort of profit, and they do kind of weird stuff within their own exchange where there's not this kind of wall of separation between. Some would call it trading, some would call it outright market manipulation. It's very easy to manipulate these markets. Like the Luna crash. At this point, I think it's pretty obvious that this was just an orchestrated attack. Like somebody with a lot of money was like, "Oh, I can make $1 billion by blowing this thing up," and that's what happened. And it's probably not good for the world if people are able to do that. But at the other end of the extreme, it's not good if we just go draconian and just completely clamp down on everything. And regulation, I think, in the right amount could be good for the space as a whole because it will instill trust in people. It'll allow adoption. Like people will be like, oh, I can use this and I don't have to worry about some random thing I don't know about blowing up all my money. That is kind of beneficial, but we also can't lose the cowboy aspect of it. I don't know if you have any further thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that clearly it's coming to stablecoins first. And just to kind of pull up Janet's quote here, I think that simply illustrates that this is a rapidly growing product and there are risks to financial stability, and we need a framework that's appropriate, and that crypto regulation would be appropriate this year, specifically around stablecoins. So I think for sure, like it's been clear that it's coming for stablecoins. I'm not so sure how that would look or play out with the rest of crypto as a whole. I think that's where a lot of people have more concerns, because so much of crypto as a whole is meant to be separate from that is the whole ethos, right? The cowboy aspect, the decentralized aspect, the sovereignty aspect. And so I think a lot of people worry about regulation on that end of things. And maybe it is that just the stablecoin side of things is regulated, or I have no idea how that ends up playing out. I mean, I don't know if you guys have even heard of or seen what it might look like for something like Bitcoin or excuse me, the rest of crypto in general to be regulated. But in general, I think it's a good thing. I think those are really good points, Stephen. Like, you can't have people getting hurt to this level. That's just really, really unfortunate. And if this is really going to be financial instruments that people use to accumulate wealth and people get hurt in the process, then yeah, we can't have it just like super Wild West shootouts, in the middle of nowhere where someone can come in and steal $1 billion and other people like literally die. Like that's essentially what happened.
I think something that exists in a regulated bond market is that you have different tiers of risky bonds, and they label them. They rank them.
Yeah.
And like I think that would kind of make sense. Like a USDC would be like a AAA rated stable coin, and then you can go down further into like shit stables, junk stables. I think that would probably help people.
That'd be super helpful.
What I don't want to see is them just slapping on accredited investor rules. Just like applying the TradFi shit where it's like, oh, well, this guy is rich enough to make his own decisions. It's like, that's pretty stupid.
No, that was the whole reason that crypto has become this path to freedom for people in the first place, because all of that was garbage. It was a game where only the rich get richer, and it was just garbage. And so crypto has provided a means for people to actually accumulate wealth without needing any of that. It's kind of like I was looking into this yesterday. It's somewhat related, but like regulation can be good in many ways. Like, for example, it took 15 years, I think at least 10 years for retail investors to be able to invest like angel investors that are accredited. Like I was looking into investing in WeFunder. Have you guys heard of that platform? WeFunder, where they do, like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. You guys know those ones, right?
Yeah.
WeFunder is like where you want to raise money for your company, your startup, and you do it as a crowdfunding. It's like equity crowdfunding. And there are a handful of big players in this space. WeFunder, Republic, which is through AngelList, Naval's company, Seed Invest. There's a bunch of them. And this regulation was really, really shit for a long time. And I think there was a cap of like $1 million that you could raise through Reg CF, Regulation CF. But last year, I think mid last year, they made it a lot better. They improved a lot of the aspects that made it so that anyone, a non-accredited investor, could invest as little as $100, and the company could raise up to $5 million in one round. But these things take time. They basically like clamped down really hard where they made it impossible, or there was no entry at all. Then they opened the door a little bit, provided like a decent level of entry, but it wasn't efficient. It wasn't good for the founders at all. And then they made it like where now everyone is like, wow, this is huge. And I think this is going to be a massive market. And companies like, WeFunder and Republic and all these, it's going to be like the number one way companies raise money in the future. It'll either be that equity crowdfunding or like a token sale through, crypto, like a Web3 model. So these things take time, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but the problem that I see with regulation as a whole is like the people in charge of making these decisions are not internet native people. That's what terrifies me. These are the people that, like, not to be like totally disrespectful, but like these are the people that like it took them 5 years to figure out how to like put an attachment into an email. Like these are the people that you had to help your mom's friend with her dial up, and you had to go over to her house and like set it up for her. It's not good. It's like, it's not the people that you want leading the pioneering aspects of like the future of all the internet and the new modern financial system that we're building. That's where I'm super fearful and concerned. And it's just like a bunch of dinosaurs versus a bunch of young cowboys that want to make a better world. And I hope that the doors open between both sides, because if they don't, it'll just be like.
I think it's a great point. I think it's on us then. It's on us then to give them the ideas, and then they can just enact the policies that we create. The internet native generation.
I think at a higher level, it's on us to stop electing so many freaking geriatric octogenarians to office. Like that's like the root of your problem, Armand. Isn't that like, well, regulation is bad? It's the people doing all of the regulating, right? Like elderly people are great. They have wisdom, right?
Yes.
But you also need like a balance. You can't have a bunch of 90-year-olds running the country who don't know how to use a phone. Like, it's just complete insanity. And until we fix that superstructural problem, like we're gonna just keep having this conversation over and over again. Totally. That's gonna turn into another 40 minute rant. So so we can just pocket that one.
Totally. Totally, like the fact that we just need to bring in crypto evangelist native types into the political realm, and that's happening. Very slowly. When you have people like we saw Andrew Yang right at East Denver give a really impassioned talk, and he's not the only one. There's people in Congress running. I met some people at East Denver and in Miami recently, like running on a pro crypto ticket. So that's a very good thing, and we need younger people. Not too young. I think that a certain level of experience is important, but I think that like in our most important positions, it's okay if somebody's 30 years old. It's not okay if they're 85 years old, 80 years old. That's just, it doesn't work.
I mean, one more comment on regulation, I guess, before we wrap it up. I think it's important to realize that like crypto isn't that much different than a lot of other kind of revolutionary technologies we've created throughout the years, which is to say that most technologies that have this incredible upside also have like an incredible downside that goes along with them. as well, right? Like splitting the atom is a good example of that, right? But also just the internet in general brought about with it like a lot of bad, right? These things aren't a one-way street. So it's important to just recognize that crypto is not that different from everything else, and to not kind of come down on it because there's all these bad things. A lot of the other great things we've created have also had those bad things. They've had their growing pains, but we've been able to kind of work through that, and humanity in almost all of those cases has definitely net benefited as a result.
Well said. So I think a good final for our final segment is like, how do we keep our heads on straight? How do we stay sane through this? It's unclear how long this is going to last, and it really, really does affect people, including ourselves. Like, I mean, even just listeners can tell has kind of been a somber. There's only been like 2 jokes in this whole episode. So yeah, I mean, what are just some, I think, important things that, and maybe, you know, sometimes in life, like when we sit and we actually discuss it, that's what creates the action. So like, I've been sick, and I know that if I sit and actually discuss some like habit ideas or ritual ideas with you guys, it's actually going to help me enact those once I feel better, and be like, okay, what are the things that I really should be doing to keep my head on straight, to have good mental health through like a very, very difficult time that is a difficult time across not just crypto, but macro. Like, there's so many things that are just so concerning and terrifying. The war in Ukraine, we're giving, you know, just rising prices, people losing. Anyway, I just think it's a lot. Most important thing that comes to mind for me is exercise. I think it's like the cheapest medicine available. I don't know where I first got that. I do think like some great speaker of the past said it, but it's like, I think it was actually Dale Carnegie that said, being busy is the cheapest medicine. And maybe I just like remixed it, but actually that's a very good book. How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie is a good book that anytime I'm like in a worried, anxious state, I've relied on.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah, because most people read how to win friends and influence people. That's his big one. And I went down a rabbit hole. I read like 3 of his other books, and the next best one, in my opinion, is that. It's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And the main thesis is that it's like, all you need to do is keep going. The moment that a person sits down and gets lost in thought is when they begin to whittle and atrophy and get lost in the thoughts themselves, which create a negative spiraling downward, like just devastating hole that you fall into, and you feel like you're alone, and you feel like you're never going to get out, and you feel like you're just the only person in the world that knows how you feel. And it's true subjectively, but it's not true objectively, because there are millions of people in the world that experience the same thing at different times in their lives for different reasons, because of what's going on around them, because of what's going on inside of them. And this whole thing is just like movement. Getting busy is the key. I think another key, so yeah, exercise, staying busy, and I think being around people that you admire, people that are positive, people that you appreciate, people that, you know, can give you that little, like, I see you, you're okay, man, pat on the back, like, we're going to get through this together.
How about people that are going through it as well? So, you know, you're not the only one. Like you might not be a failure. It's just, you know, a bad market. I think mine is kind of just like investing 101, but like Steven said before, we sometimes lose our first principles. We can kind of lose track of it. And I think it's just holding cash. And, you know, like to those poor souls who took their own lives when Luna went to zero, it's like, you know, if they held a significant amount of cash, you know, enough, then they might not have chose that path. And like for me, I can tell when I'm over allocated, because when the market dips like it is now, I get depressed. So it's like, I know I need more cash. And then like, I think it's a sliding spectrum. If you're holding so much cash that you're freaking pumped that the market's going down, maybe it's time to deploy a little bit, start DCA.
Hmm. That's pretty interesting. And I think the funny thing is though, we've been talking about how like I know like man, I had been deploying into the euphoria, into the bull run so hard. I mean, we joked on the podcast so many times, you're like how cash poor we are, like pulling nickels out of couch cushions just to deploy more. And it's hard to quickly cycle back out into stable coins or cash. It's very hard. You nailed the timing with Luna and Anchor. You got out in time, but it's really hard to do. So like, what would you have done? Like, it could have been worse. Like, I mean, Steven, obviously you lost some on this whole Luna situation, but you made a good short. But just in general, like, I mean, you've been in a whirlwind. It hasn't been good. Like, what are the things that you default to stay sane and feel better? I feel like you have some really good like rituals that you rely on from time to time when you need to get your head out of stuff.
I feel like I'm not very good at it, to be honest, but it might also just be because I've lost touch with what other people go through and like the amount of losses I deal with on a regular basis are probably a lot more than most people's, because I've been losing money professionally for about 14 years now. My biggest, like, I feel like every market I learned a little bit more and I get a little better. This bull market, I was very on point with so many of my thoughts, my theses. And what ended up happening was my execution was really bad. So the first time around, I had no idea what the hell was going on, right? And I was just flapping in the wind and ultimately like ran up a huge sum and then lost all of it. And this time, I was really good at figuring out what would happen, relatively when it would happen, but my execution was bad. Like I think the last 3 days were like a great example of this, right? Like, I knew that Luna was a Ponzi scheme. They were just paying a lot of money. And I hedged out a lot of my risk. So that part I did execute, right? So I guaranteed I couldn't lose more than like 20% of the money I had in Tera, which was step one. So that was good, right? But my plan was to get out as soon as I saw a DPEG, right? I saw the DPEG, but I let whatever was happening to me at the time kind of get in the way of that, right? And ruined my execution on that, right? And then the last couple of days trading volatility, like I made a lot of mistakes because even though my plan was, or my thoughts were really good coming into the last few days, like I was very ready for this, as you guys know. But ultimately, when it all kind of came to be, I didn't really put down my plan, and this is something I'm going to do in the future more, is like I'm going to put down my plan in writing. This is what I believe. This is how I'm going to execute on these things, because it does no good to sit here and tell you guys that like I think the market's going to crash like 4 or 5 months ago, right, if I don't make a lot of money from it. It does no good to say like I think like all these L1s are going to just get slaughtered versus ETH. Like if I am not paying attention and I mess up the timing on the trade and I don't get any of those gains, right? Like, so that's a big thing I think people can do, is to recognize the distinction between like being right in versus like knowing what's going to happen versus having a plan versus executing on the plan. They're like these three things that you all have to you have to nail all of them to actually go through with it. And I think this bull market, I probably give myself like a B for getting through all that. And like last bull market was an F.
I really liked that idea you had where you like write out your thesis and then you kind of write out your execution plan in advance. And my question for you is like, do you think it's too late to do that now because we missed a big down move already? Or do you think you could still do that and benefit from it?
I mean, you can. It's not too late, and you guys probably noticed. Like I started tweeting a little bit more and writing stuff in the Discord, because the process of putting pen to paper and writing it out like forces me to think through it and put it out there and kind of be accountable to it, right?
Nice.
Because in the moment you freak out, right?
Sort of like journaling publicly. I like that.
Like I still have a plan, even though I partially screwed up my existing plan. I still have a plan moving forward, and I think everybody should have a plan moving forward, right? They should, if they have cash, right, they should be planning when to buy in advance. Like, what are you looking at? Like, because when the bottom comes, it's never easy to buy. That's the whole reason it's a bottom, right? Like nobody knows it's the bottom. It often feels like the worst time. And if you ahead of time are like, well, I think this is going to be the bottom because X, Y, Z. And if I see these signs, it will signal to me that it's a probability it's the bottom, or at least we're close to it and I can start buying. Then you can kind of stick to that plan and not be like kind of paralyzed with fear as like the number goes down and you're just like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Which is what most people do. And you know, what I've certainly done for most of my life still. And I want to avoid repeating that mistake.
Your theses have been, to give you credit, bro, your theses have been very good. Like you basically called this year as well. And
on episode one, he called Doom in 2022.
Was that episode 1?
One of the first ones.
Yeah. I remember Doom in 2022. It's Doom fucking city over here. Yeah, that's a very good tip. And very important. I mean, Nick talks about this often as well, right? Like just looking back at his overall investment thesis and making sure he's continuing to refine it, but also stick to it when necessary, when the pressure is there and doesn't feel right to execute in that way. You just have to really look at your plan and move with conviction.
Yeah, he's good at that for sure. And I'll say, like, I like your recommendations for dealing with the pain, right? Like, I have rediscovered the benefits of working out recently and listening to like really aggressive, like heavy metal while I do it. It's been like incredibly cathartic for me when I feel like I'm frozen, like, and I don't know what to do. And I'm just so like, holy God. And then the workout, like, it really helps, right? But I've also figured out that like, prevention's sort of worth a pound of cure, which is why most of the stuff I just talked about was kind of preventative. Because like once you're there, you're kind of already screwed to a degree, you know?
Yeah, good point. What kind of heavy metal are we talking here?
So I mean, I don't even know if I would call it heavy. Some people might think it's heavy metal, but like I got a lot of Tool on my list. I got a lot of Iron Maiden on my workout playlist, but I also have like random other stuff. I like Foo Fighters or some old Rage Against the Machine. I really like
Perfect Circle guy.
Yeah, I really like Detroit Rock City by Kiss to kind of get in the mood. It's just got like a nice little kind of pump up vibe to it. I have a pretty eclectic workout playlist. I've been curating it over time, but I've gotten back to it. There was a phase where I was literally listening to podcasts when I worked out, and I was like,
I can't do it.
Chill out, dude. You gotta take a break.
Yeah, I can't do two things at once, as you guys know. I could never listen to a podcast and work out. But this is great, guys. Any other final tips on just how to stay sane? I think these are some really, really great ones.
Yeah, I know I've blabbed enough, but if he has anything to say.
Yeah.
No. Just
all right, cool.
Try not to kill yourself.
It's time to go back to bed for Eric and I.
Yeah, I'm dying.
Steven, good to see you from the other room. And thanks everybody for tuning in and sticking with us all the way through. If you're still here, remember again, if you could leave us a review in Apple Podcasts, we love those. We'll read out the best ones on the episodes. And hop in the Discord. Check out all the links below in the show notes, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple. There are notes attached to the episode. Everything is down below. Our Twitters. I love this idea of Steven tweeting his investing journaling more. So give us all a follow. And Steven has been putting out some very good tweets, so give him a follow. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace. One love.